Our conversation about Calvinism continues with Pastor Wayne Larson and a moment for the people in Connecticut. Why? Why again? That's today, live on The View.
Let's get it started. Ha! Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Ha! Let's get it started in here. Yeah.
Let's get it started in here.
Welcome to The View from a Pew, a conversation among Christians who are out to grow their faith by asking the simple questions, the tough questions, and the stuff you really wish your pastor would talk about. Come on now, let's reason together. It's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so join the conversation. Call 855-244-0077. That's 855-244-0077. Now, here's your host, J. Michael McCoy.
4 minutes after the hour, and we thank you for being here today. Our special guest is Pastor Wayne Larson from
Redeemer Presbyterian Church here in Des Moines.
That's right, Redeemer Presbyterian Church, which is over on School Street?
College Avenue.
College. Yeah. Well, that's close.
We're
School,
in the Beaverdale
college.
area.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And just so we make it clear, Wayne is Father Tattoos.
I've never met this man in my life.
And Chris Roloff's pastor. So Wayne is a real friend of the program, but this is the first time you've ever been here.
Second time, actually.
Second time, okay. Yep. Well, we thank you for being here. And we're going to get into a conversation on Calvinism in a little bit, but we just got to mention the Connecticut thing. I don't know how you do live radio and not bring that up. For those of you that for some reason are just hearing this, it was interesting because I had the Christian Business Networking meeting today. So I left my house at about 11 o'clock. And at that time, they thought there was one person dead and maybe a couple people hurt. I get out of that meeting at 2 o'clock, and we are, 27 people
I had the very same experience. I got online this morning, and I saw one of the first Reuters reports, and it just said, they believe the shooter was dead and a couple people injured and stuff. And my first thought was, oh, good, at least it wasn't worse than that. And then got on later in the morning, and there it is.
Yeah, now they're talking 27 dead, 18 of them being students, and the other 9, obviously, faculty, and they say the shooter's dead. I don't know. I mean, we're not getting clear reports.
It'll be a while. This
will be a night to catch the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and find out what's going on. But and the show before me today, that liberal nut job, his whole deal is we ban guns, and that isn't gonna make a difference. I just put on Facebook. To me, it's obvious why these things are happening. You pull Jesus out of schools, and what do you think's going to happen there? When you pull God out of government schools and the workplace, look what's happened in government schools and the workplace. So that, to me, that answer, you don't take away guns, you change hearts.
Well, Mac, the one thing they always talk about is what type of gun is used. My question is, what form of faith did these people have? Because that goes more to the heart of how this happened than the fact that he had a 9mm pistol. Because you never hear about their faith if they had any.
Right.
And if they did, you're not going to kill your parents, which is now the latest report. He killed his father and his mother, and then after that decided to turn on the innocents, and it just makes me sick.
He killed his mother and father at a separate location?
Yes, at 2 separate locations. It sounds like he killed his father in New Jersey, then drove up to Connecticut and killed his mother, and then went to his mother's workplace and started going through the elementary school.
See, we're getting a lot of crisscrossing reports. The one distinction, though, Mac, that I would probably make here is I don't know that this is necessarily God being removed from our schools and our workplace. This is God being removed from our society at large is why I think we're seeing an increase in this, or potentially why. This is a wicked and depraved society we live in, and this is the evidences. Yeah, I mean that's This is the evidence of a faithless society that refuses to acknowledge God and to worship Him. And I don't think it's just merely out of schools and workplaces, but it's just out of everyday American life.
I don't disagree.
The sins, there's sin all around us, and one of the first sins committed, Cain killed Abel, or Abel killed Cain. Who died?
You got it right the first time.
Cain killed Abel.
Yeah.
So anyway, we can sit here and talk about this, but if you want to talk about that kind of stuff and hear about it, we're just not going to do it here today.
Send prayers.
Yeah, just send prayers. And besides that, Maddie's a Brit, and this really makes him mad, and I don't want him, starting to cuss all over the place.
No, it's just if we
Can't
come
control him, and
we just come
then
from a
I
different-
get problems.
we come
with
from a
the
different
FCC.
point of view with regards to firearms. And what you said before, Father Tattoo said about guns are not the main problem, but in these situations, sometimes, and I don't know in this situation, to me, they exacerbate the issue.
We would agree there.
You could use exactly the same arguments about God in society, in schools, in England, in Britain. It's even worse in Britain. But with these things, I'm not saying never happened, but the last time this happened in Britain was the mid-1990s, the last one. I remember it. And there must be, we're not that culturally different. There is something in culture here that, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't be able to have guns, and it's your I'm a guest here.
Do you have guns in your country?
Ownership's a lot more. It's a lot stricter ownership.
Is it?
Yes, but I've never seen a gun.
Come to my house and I'll
no, seriously, We don't grow up with them. I never saw one. I did. I'll
You don't
tell
have
a lie.
one on you right now,
my
Brad?
uncle was a farmer, and I saw one of his rifles once. That's the only gun I ever saw when I was a kid. So it's a completely different.
There's a cultural element here. The question, and I like Wayne kind of framed it, is it's clearly a gun culture here in the United States where it's tied down to our roots, and I wonder if it's even possible to effectively remove it at this point. And that's the argument I would have. I've always said, and I'll say it again, I'm fine with every gun in the United States disappearing tomorrow. The problem is that I'm going to want to make sure mine's the last one to go. Because I don't trust the other people with them, which is why it necessitates, in my mind, maybe even falsely so, maybe even sillily so, to have one. But I think it's a reasonable line of thought, that we can't disarm a people that's innocent when we know the first group we need to disarm is the people that aren't going to be innocent with those guns. And how do we do that? The conversation isn't how we disarm the republic. It's how do we disarm the people that are going to do bad things with them? Because the people that aren't going to ever commit crimes with the guns, those guns aren't harmful. They're just pieces of iron. It's the people that have the intention. And part of how we disarm them is right here on Christian radio. We preach the gospel. That's how we change. That's how we change the society. That's how we change culture. That's the difference in a culture that doesn't kill itself and the culture that does. Is the gospel going out in that regard as far as a cure? Because Bradshaw said before he left, and I know you want to get off this, Mac, and I'll respect your wishes.
That's all right.
But Bradshaw said that the problem is a man-made problem, and man need to find a way to fix it. Well, the problem is that it's a man-made problem, but God's already given us the solution for this, and it's not available in humanity. It's available in Scripture. It's available in God and in the restoration that Christ offers us. Not in and of ourselves. We're slaves to our nature, which segues kind of into our discussion on Calvinism, being a slave to nature.
Are you done?
Good segue, Dan.
Okay. Calvinism.
Yes.
The walk that Chris and Dan and Pastor Mudloff did with me was one of the most revealing walks I've ever had. And it at times it got all messed up because and I don't say this self-deprecating, but I'm just not the sharpest knife in the room. It's never been my desire to go too in depth on anything in particular. I would rather have a fair amount of knowledge on a lot of things than be an expert in one or the other. But I really was fascinated because it's clear to me that Scripture talks enough about predestination that we can't deny that that's part of God's plan. Tell me in your own words, Pastor, what you think a Calvinist believes.
Yeah, I think probably the most important feature of Reformed theology, Calvinism, but you find it elsewhere. You don't find it only there, but is the fact that God is absolutely in control and that He is our Creator, and as Creator, He has absolute sovereignty over all that He has made, and so that there's you start with the basic understanding of God as our Creator and who is in control of all things. Now, there's also the fact that there's other factors about the fall and man's rebellion against God, as well as the curse that mankind fell under as our first parents sinned, and how that curse is prosecuted against mankind throughout the world. And but the fact of the matter is, Calvinism oftentimes is viewed narrowly as talking about the mechanics of salvation. How do we talk about an individual getting saved? And so we jump them through several different hoops, and that has a place. It has an important place in the discussion. But generally, the broader picture, is really kind of historic Orthodox Christianity. God, in His sovereignty, set about to remedy the fall of our first parents, and He did so ultimately through the cross of Jesus Christ and His resurrection, and that even in coming to salvation, He is saving those whom He has sovereignly chosen. And
let me ask you a question right there. Whenever I hear it explained that way, I get a feeling that God kind of gave up on us. Kind of sat back and said, well, my plan isn't working. And so all I can do is forgive all their sins. And they're going to do that by coming to me as somebody that they can relate to as a human.
Didn't that happen back in the Old Testament? Didn't that happen, Pastor, in the Old Testament? Didn't God sort of say, well, this isn't...
Well, yeah, when He sent the floods.
Well, the floods, and then it's happened just some of His dialogue with Moses and with the people. It was all that I would say that was hinted at. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, you're talking about like when the Bible tells us that God told Moses that He was sorry that He ever brought them.
Well, just different. I mean, I don't get the sense. I'm reading, actually listening through with an audio, listening through the Old Testament, and I've not got the sense that it all went smoothly.
Oh, right.
Like God, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I've just got that sense that it's not just smooth sailing and
right. Well, I think the thing you have to what helps perhaps is recognizing that the fall, the mankind's fall into sin was brought about by our first parents, by Adam and Eve, and that and it was also, you also have to take into account that what Adam was there to do in the first place. He was set there in the garden to to rule and exercise dominion over the earth, and if you think about I'm preaching through Genesis right now, so it's kind of fresh in my mind. But if you look at Adam and his role, even as prior to the fall, you saw him in a place where the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which they ate from that they weren't supposed to, was something that was held out for him. But it was that phrase, the knowledge of good and evil, is always applied elsewhere in the Bible to talk about maturity, kingship, royalty, and so forth. So the implication there is that Adam was in a probationary period of time in which he was there to grow in wisdom and maturity, to ultimately accomplish a position of ruler and authority over all the world, and that he failed to do, but Christ accomplished.
All right, Pastor Wayne Larson is our guest today. Maddie Smith in the house, along with Army Brad and Father Tattoo. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and we'll be back talking about Calvinism today, live here on The View from a Pew on 99.3 KTIA, powered by WebcastOneLive.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotta be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Have you ever been told you're not a good enough Christian? Well, we have too. Join the conversation. Call 855-244-0077. Now here's your host, president of the Not a Good Enough Christian Club, J. Michael McCoy.
21 minutes after the hour, and we are talking about Calvinism. For those of you that are just joining us, we are making a conscious effort not to talk about what's going on in Connecticut today. The information is so jagged, and if you want to talk about that or listen to people talk about that, I'm sure it's all over every other dial. But right here, I want to get to some constructive conversation. And quite frankly, I agree with what Maddie said a little bit ago. I'm so darn mad that I probably wouldn't hold my tongue correctly. So Pastor Wayne Larson is here, and I'm thankful that you're here today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
We're talking about Calvinism and having you kind of break down what it is. And it is God's sovereignty, which is 100% over the face of the earth. And his will be done. And yet there are places in the Bible when man has changed God's or altered God's plan and changed his mind.
Yeah, I think that you'd have to say not in an ultimate sense. I mean, not in the sense of that that is the creature overturning the creator. But yes, I mean it's certainly the case that the Bible tells us that God changed his mind about something. I think we're to read that not to the point of it undermining that sense of sovereignty, which really is established at Genesis 1:1. When God created the heavens and the earth, it's essentially God created everything. And so so you have this, God is dealing with his people in time and in history. And getting back to a question you asked earlier about, it doesn't seem like, God just, things get messed up, and why doesn't God just forgive everybody? He's got the power and so forth. And, what you see is really God's plan being worked out in the course of history. The Adam and Eve fall, Cain kills Abel, and Seth is chosen. And he's the one to whom the people will call upon the name of the Lord, or through whom they'll call upon the name of the Lord. He will be the chosen. And what you see in Genesis, 5 and 6, or 4, 5, and 6, you see a line of Seth and a line of Cain, and the blessings travel through the line of Seth, and you ultimately get to a second judgment of the flood, and then you get a third judgment of the Tower of Babel, and then you get God choosing Abraham, and it's through Abraham's offspring that again you have this, and each time you have this series of history lived out in the lives of people who are to be faithful, dealing with their own sin, dealing with the tragedy of life and so forth. But through that process, God is forming a people to serve his larger purpose, and that larger purpose is fixing what got broke right at the very beginning. And so through Abraham, you come the people of Israel, and Israel is to be the line through whom the blessings are to be to the world. And as you come to the first century, after all the history of God's people have been come to a climax, they come to a climax in the person of Jesus Christ, who is the Messiah of Israel. And as the Messiah of Israel, he is the representative chosen one of Israel. He's the sort of and he is, as it turns out, also the Son of God, and also man in his whole perfection. We see him born, we see him struggle with the fallenness of this world, with temptations. He's tempted in the wilderness and so forth. He says no to temptation. He says yes to God. He takes that all the way to the point where he is unjustly arrested, beaten, convicted, murdered, and there you have it. And he dies the perfect death of the perfect second Adam. I mean, and so really God is, and all through this you see God choosing. Of all the people of the world, he chose Abraham. Of all the people of the world, he chose. Of all the people, he chose Mary. To give birth to a son, and it's in that you see that God's choosing, God's saving is always for a purpose as well, and it's really to bring along his plan, and his ultimate plan is to bring to bring salvation to the world, not in a universalistic sense, but in the sense that all who will hear the gospel and repent and believe, and that goes out through all the world.
Okay, Pastor Wayne Larson is our guest today. Now, this is the point that I had the hardest time with Calvinism. Do we, according to Calvinists, we don't choose God; God chooses us?
Well, it's yes and no.
Okay,
that's where there's some confusion. Certainly, just as there is in the order of creation, God speaks and it was. There's a primacy of God's action. God speaks. God works first, and the same is true with redemption. We are, if you go back to one of the great saints of old, St. Augustine, he said that all of us choose the things we desire, and that's what we follow. We will always choose the things we desire. That's a way to understand idolatry. It's a way to understand our own sin too. The things that we truly desire are often the things that we choose to do, and what we need is a higher desire. And mankind in his fallenness is in a tragic situation where they will always choose against God, away from God. They will always choose to pursue other ends and not God, until God graciously intervenes and opens their heart so that they can choose the right way.
But when they don't choose the right way, and see, this is where it gets hard for me. When they don't choose, God already knew they wouldn't choose, right?
Yeah, God in His sovereignty does, and He knows all things. But the secondary causes, the things that happen, my choosing a shirt out of the closet today, those things are real causes, real choices that are really made. And so God doesn't do violence to the will of the creature. People will choose always what they want, and so even though He knows ahead of time the end from the beginning, that doesn't evacuate the reality that those people are really choosing, and they're really choosing the wrong thing.
Or they're choosing God.
But that will only happen when God opens their heart to choose because of the condition of sin and fallenness.
Okay.
Would it be fair to say that we're slaves to our nature?
Yeah, we're slaves. We're slave carries a bunch of connotations, good and not so good.
Sure,
but yeah,
we're bound to, but slaves to. I mean, we're all slaves. One kills, one saves, right?
Yeah, I can't fly because I don't have wings and feathers.
Sure.
I can't fly because I don't have wings and feathers.
Yeah, I'm bound to the earth.
Pastor Wayne Larson is our guest today as we unpack Calvinism a little bit. So for a long time, I was stuck, and you guys join in whenever you want. I was stuck with this concept that two souls come to earth.
Mm-hmm.
God places them both here, but He's only going to let one of them come home.
Mm.
And that I learned that wasn't really the right way of looking at it.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a very crass way of looking at it. That doesn't really take into some of the necessary qualifications as to that it's not merely that they're just there and that they're not that they're just helplessly waiting to find out what God's going to do. There are active souls who are actively living and choosing to live the life that's before them, and that's why you have this as grace is primary in creation, God said, and it was, so grace is primary in redemption. God says, and it was. There's a mystery. There's absolutely a mystery there. We don't know necessarily why one person's heart is opened and another's isn't. Those are questions. Those are.
But has seeking got something to do with it? The fact that we look, because and that's another thing from the Old Testament. It always talks about David as a man after God's heart, or seeking God's heart. So there's definitely. And I understand that God, but there is somebody that is described in that way, isn't he?
Yeah, that's describing, I would say, David's righteousness. It's describing his character as his righteousness, but it's a graced righteousness. It's a righteousness that's been changed. You could also point to Jeremiah that says, "No man seeks after God, not even one."
Well, and in the David story, though, Maddie, you also got to think that God elected David to that position. Even when we see when the prophet goes to Jesse and looks through all of his sons,
right?
God chose David.
Samuel.
Yeah, I was trying to remember which prophet. I didn't want to be wrong on that. So Samuel goes to Jesse. Jesse's the father of David.
Yep.
And he goes through all his sons, says there's got to be one more. There's one God sent me for. None of these are it. So you see God actively working in David's life long before these statements about David are made. So God was already there. God was present. And so you can make the case that God was already active in David's life long before these statements were made.
But you bring up a good point, though, about the earlier point just generally about seeking. And I think that, I think there you have to step back and take a look at the bigger picture, and that the heart begins to seek after God when God allows that heart to begin seeking. And it was C.S. Lewis who famously said, "I came into the kingdom kicking and screaming, drugged by the hounds, and so forth." And oftentimes it's like that for people. There's a mystery as to how some people are born into Christian homes, and it's just as natural as getting up in the morning, and they don't have a time where they remember anything about consciously not believing. For others, they have lived a life of rebellion, unbelief, and someone explains the gospel to them, and their heart is opened, and they believe.
And what's funny is my life was both of those.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so was mine.
I had
or a combination of the two.
I had a renowned I thought I had an incredible relationship with God and went to church all my life, lay reader, on the board or whatever you call it.
That's because you're from Jefferson County, Nebraska. That's
Gage County.
Oh, Gage County.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But yet I was a scoundrel.
It's Fairbury's Jefferson.
Yeah, I was a scoundrel. And it wasn't until, and I love this term, the Hound of Heaven, came and just put the chompers on me. And once he did that, I can't imagine not seeing God for who he is at that point.
Yeah.
But yet I don't know how many times that Hound of Heaven came and bit me on the backside and I didn't respond correctly. I don't know.
Yeah, and there are some times, too, when, what might seem to be a conversion isn't necessarily a conversion. Sometimes children, they grow up in a strong Christian home and they're taught to believe, and they do believe, but yet it's a very childlike faith, and they go off to college and suddenly an adult world is thrust upon them and temptations that they haven't experienced before, and they give into them for a season, and suddenly they realize just how sinful they really are, as we really are, all of us, and they turn to God and say, God, help me out of this, and God does, and and sometimes that's interpreted as, well, that's when I became a Christian. Well, maybe, but it's also maybe the time you became an adult Christian.
Yeah, right. So, you grew up.
Yeah, you grew up. So
it's recognized your own character defects.
There's no mold necessarily.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wayne Larson is our guest today. When we come back, we're going to do what I love to do. We're going to go through some questions that we commonly ask pastors on The View from a Pew. Your questions are always welcome. You can call them in at 1-800-244-0077. You can put them on my Facebook page, whatever you want to do. Army Brad's in the house, Maddie Smith, Father Tattoo, our guest Wayne Larson, and I'm J. Michael McCoy. If I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. Love this job. Couldn't do it without you. Right here on The Truth, 99.3 KTIA, Iowa.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by
you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
22 before the top, Salem Radio Network News coming in at 4, and then 4:03, of course. It's True Blue, hosted by Pastor Michael Mudloff, and that's coming on today. All right, Pastor Wayne Larson from Redeemer Presbyterian Church is our guest today. And a disclaimer, this is Chris Roloff and Father Tattoo's pastor. And so we can blame you.
So now the truth has come out.
We now know where all of this comes from. But it's a great church. And my wife and I visited one time and enjoyed your message and your service. It was really nice. One of the things I love to do is have pastors on and ask some of the same questions that I like to ask, because the answers vary. And I've got 4 or 5 of my favorites, and if you guys have any, you let me know. But one of my favorites...
No, I'm waiting to hear his answer to some of your favorites.
Okay. One of my favorites is, and it's a question.
Yeah.
Is tolerance the characteristic of a man with no convictions? Is tolerance a characteristic of a man with no convictions? So he's tolerant of anything.
Well, tolerant of anything is pretty wide open. I mean, tolerance is a virtue. To be cultivated. It's far superior to violence. Of course, there's levels and situations and arenas in which things can and should be tolerated, others not. So it's kind of a wide open question in that sense.
Well,
but I wouldn't say that tolerance in general is a character flaw. Now, tolerance of any and everything, if it's so open ended, then you have a hard time wondering what you stand for. That's one can be tolerant when one knows where they stand. If one doesn't know where they stand and is hiding behind tolerance, then that's a definite weakness.
Well, and I'll give you a perfect example.
Okay.
I believe, this isn't about you or anybody else, but I believe that the reason that those shootings in Connecticut happened today, and Happy Sunday or whatever, Happy Valley in Oregon at this mall, and that so many of these things are happening is because we as Christians have become tolerant of being pushed out of society and government. Okay? And when you push God out, the person that replaces him is the accuser. It's bad. And anybody who tells you I don't want God in the schools or in the government, and I don't want a crash setting in front of the courthouse, that is a person not of God.
Okay. Well,
I know I landed you a lot there, but at some point we Christians should have said, no, we're going to teach about Jesus in our public schools.
Well, that raises an interesting host of questions, because it's the challenge there is you're coming from the question of power and a question of dominance and a question of where is the Christian and how is the Christian most effective. Is the Christian school a place that I guess it's going to reflect the culture. So I guess I'm a little hesitant to agree with you completely there, because I think that as Christians we don't necessarily win by the exercise of power. That there are things lost, but at the same time, I think that I'm not sure that's actually the causal connection to.
But I think sometimes as Christians, we're willing to surrender before we've even put up the fight.
But
we allow people. There's a friend of Max that says that when he reads from the Bible that it's hate speech. Yeah. Well, then he needs to go back and redefine what he thinks is hate. Because
it is hate speech.
It's love speech because
it's not. If you're not
hate
a believer,
and love are not opposites.
If you're not a believer, the Bible tells a horrible tale of hell and damnation and separation from God. It's hate speech.
But
God hates some people.
I argue that it's actually love speech, and they have been turned so far away from love that the opposites of love and hate is the same thing, and that's apathy, and they want apathy.
You know, and I understand where you're going with that, but I think that's kind of part of the problem with Greater Evangelical Church is we've reduced this gospel to only a gospel of love and have no proper attention on the overarch of the story, which the Bible isn't about humanity in general anyway. It's Christ-centric.
Right.
I'm so glad he was going to be quiet today.
Yeah, I'm trying.
What did I say? What did I wish for?
But to a guy that doesn't believe in God, denies the existence of God, what the Bible lays out to him is a bunch of rules that he knows he can't follow, and then tells him he's going to go to his eternal death for those rules because he refuses to acknowledge God. And that is, I can see why that's hate speech. Certainly anybody could see why that's hate speech.
I still think that a lot of some of the tensions of this discussion revolve around power and how we use power, how we use power to our advantage, how we react when we feel power is being restricted or lessened, and that concerns me. I think I think also too, the way we can easily make nostalgic the past. That they're taking God now out of schools, as though, not necessarily saying this, but almost implying that there was a time when things were so much better, and that was the reason. And what that can do, that can actually hide and mask a sense of powerlessness or a sense of power being taken away. I think one needs to be careful about that, because as one thinks Christianly about this, I think one has to bring into account, the temptation of power, the temptation to wield power against others, and also that when we feel as though our temptation is being, or our power is being taken away, how we respond to that. Do we respond with anger? Well, James tells us the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Do we respond with violence? Do we try to take back the power? I think that, I guess for me, that's one of the reasons why I'm a little not too happy with the way we've politicized so much of our Christian speech and Christian being in the world. I think it's overly connected with power.
I don't think God cares. I might be going out on a limb whether there is a crib. What do you call it? A crib. We call it a crib outside the courtroom or not.
Oh, I think he does.
I don't think he does. I think he's more bothered what's inside the hearts of the people serving in the courtroom. And the same in the schools. You can say all the prayers you like. I've been to Catholic schools where there's people in the school who most people never. No, people didn't care. Could care less. God is concerned with what's in there. And does it annoy me? If I coach in a high school, I've got to be careful how if I go down that route of mentioning Christianity, I've got to be careful how I would do it. But I do it. I don't do it like I don't say it. But there's ways to say it, and the best way to say it is to live it. In all honesty.
Well, there's some real truth to that. I think that as if society identifies Christianity with the ethics of Christianity, of living lives of self-sacrifice and love for your neighbor. I think a whole lot more would be different than today. Oftentimes, many in the secular world will view Christianity as a mechanism for exercising dominant power. They were once in control; they're going to try to assert control. So some will see a creche in a courthouse as a political demonstration that we're still in charge, and I think that can communicate some really bad messages.
How about that God is still in charge? Wayne
Amen.
Larson.
Amen to that.
Wayne Larson is our guest. We'll come back for our last segment with a couple more questions from Ask the Pastor right here live on 99.3 KTIA, powered by WebcastOneLive.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
We're the ones in the pew, not pulpit. Come on now, let's reason together. The phone lines are open, so call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
3:50, 10 before the top. Salem Radio News at the top of the hour. I'm sure they will update us on more information on this tragic event in Connecticut. I just don't know how you put it into words. So I'm not going to try. Pastor Wayne Larson is our guest today. We're doing Ask the Pastor. Here's one of my favorite questions.
Yeah.
Do you or anybody, but I'm asking you, have a relationship with the accuser?
How do you? I guess how you would define relationship. Satan is, like you said, the accuser. He is our enemy. So as to the degree you have a relationship with your enemy, I mean, you do have that relationship as such. You don't have a relationship like you do with a friend or a colleague, but he is in relation to you because he is a being. He exists, and so as you do too, and he is affecting your life through his accusations, his temptations, and whatnot. So yes, I mean, in short order, you do have a relationship with him, as you understand it in that way.
Father Tattoo, don't you think that's the best answer we've ever heard?
Yeah, that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, that was really good.
Oh, well.
Yeah, and it's interesting when I asked that question of a female.
Mm-hmm.
No. Of course not. Because relationship is so...
It's sort of what's packed in that word relationship.
Yeah, important to them.
It's kind of a loaded term.
And it's hard for me. And I love my wife dearly, but she was one person that we don't see eye to eye on this question.
Yeah.
Because I believe that we have an absolute relationship with the accuser. It is called being human.
Yeah, go back to Martin Luther. Luther was great at yelling back at the devil. I mean,
Jesus did, didn't he?
He would fart at the devil. I mean, that was his own words, So
Jesus did, didn't he?
Well, yeah, but
Jesus spoke to him,
right? So
commanded him away.
All right, next question.
Yeah,
in Mark 8:22, it takes 2 times for Jesus to heal the blind man.
Yes.
Why?
I think he was I think this was an example of making a point. I don't think it had to do with an inability or lack of ability to heal in a different way. I think he was showing his disciples something about the nature of discipleship in the kingdom in that context.
What happened? Was that the one where they had the mud in his eye?
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that anything to do with? Could that be to do with spiritual healing as well, or not?
Well, I'd have to go back and look at that more carefully, but just off the top of my head, as I remember, I think that in that context, Jesus is showing his disciples something about discipleship, that and that perfect clarity, perfect healing doesn't always come right away, and the blind man served to. He was healed, but he served as the Lord used him to show his disciples. And I'm sure this man himself something important about discipleship.
Okay, next. As I understand it, heaven is a happy place. No sadness, no tears, no regrets. It is living that life that God intended man to live before Adam and Eve fell.
Well, heaven. Let's unpack that just a little bit. Heaven presently is with the Lord, and so it is the fulfillment of our highest and most important desire and point of happiness. If we talk about heaven in a future-oriented way, one day heaven will be like this and this. The Bible speaks of a new heavens and a new earth. So it speaks of a recreation of a new heavens and a new earth, and so. So heaven is not otherworldly. It's not a place just removed from this terrestrial ball, so to speak. But it will. It'll be analogous. It'll be fundamentally different, but also there'll be things that are recognizable and the same.
Okay, so and that's not really the question. I just put that premise out there.
Yeah.
And we may not agree completely on what heaven is, so the next question may not be applicable.
Sure.
But the question is actually, okay, then, in my view, if heaven is no sadness, all joy, wonder, if your sibling doesn't make it to heaven, you won't know it. You won't know who isn't there.
It just takes us beyond what we know.
Okay.
Will be the case. I don't know if we're really ever. I think you have the parable of Lazarus suffering torment, seeing. The Lazarus was a slave, but you see Lazarus in Abraham's bosom, and you see his master torment and he recognizes him there. But I think that serves the point of the parable. I'm not sure if it speaks in any fundamental way in terms of just what do we know, what will we not know in terms of other things. But I think also at the same time, our love for other people, our love for other things, is a reflection, and sometimes a dim reflection of our love for God, and more importantly, God's love for us. And so I think that even should we be cognizant of the absence of a loved one, I think that it'll be understood in the context of knowing the reasons why, knowing God's love, and I don't think that it will spoil our time there.
Okay. Last question. If someone were to ask someone, why are you a Christian? To me, there's one blanket answer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's one blanket answer? My blanket answer is because God called me. Because Christ called me.
Well, no, I wouldn't say there's one blanket answer. I think that's certainly true, and that's certainly a great answer. I think the context could elicit different responses.
Right. And so it really would be the opposite, that everyone has their own story, and that's why they are a Christian.
Well, it's both and. I don't know if it's just merely the opposite of it. In that there is a commonality of God's love, God's redeeming love, and that's the centerpiece behind it. So I guess I'm not disagreeing with your answer. I'm just thinking that there are other situations and scenarios where you may answer it in a different way, given the nature of the context, who you're talking to and about what.
Wayne, thanks for being here.
Oh, I loved it. Thanks.
Appreciate it. You're always welcome.
Thanks a lot.
You little midget. We'll see you next week, okay?
See you, mate.
All right. Don't be so sad, okay? God's among us.
Yeah.
Brad, see you this
sure.
weekend at
Yes,
church
sir.
or otherwise. And Father Tattoo, I won't see you till Monday. Praise Jesus. There is a God. And all I
can't
ask
say
of
that.
you at home, especially on this day, is pray.